Let's go live to the Treasurer, Jim Chalmers, responding to the GDP numbers.
Interest rates, high but moderating inflation and ongoing global economic uncertainty. The Australian economy grew by 0.2% in the December quarter to be 1.5% higher through the year, according to the ABS. Growth slowed over the year, but it held up in the quarter. The economy grew a little, but not a lot. Growth in our economy was quite weak, as we have expected. Even weak growth is welcome growth in the circumstances. Slow growth is still significant growth, given the challenging global conditions combined with the impact of higher interest rates here in our own economy. Now, we need to remember that towards the end of the year, Japan and the UK both went into recession. Around a quarter of G20 economies have recorded a technical recession or narrowly avoided one. And it was only yesterday that the Chinese authorities said that they expect their period of softer growth to continue there as well. Today's numbers show that we are not immune from that global economic uncertainty, but our economy continues to grow despite all of these pressures. In fact, since the Albanese government came to office, Australia has now recorded the second biggest economic expansion and the fastest employment growth compared to the major advanced economies. But we do know and we do acknowledge that many people and small businesses are still doing it tough, and we see the impact in these numbers of cost of living pressures which are continuing to bite. You see the impact in these numbers from higher interest rates. You see that particularly in the rising mortgage interest costs captured in the data that is released today. You see that flow through to the household consumption data, which is again quite weak, growing just 0.1% in the quarter and 0.1% through the year as well. But today's figures also show, and this is one of the encouraging elements, is that Australians are earning more, and in the quarter they're keeping more of what they earn as well. Wages per employee grew 0.4% in the quarter to be 5% higher through the year. Income tax payable fell by 3.3% in the quarter. And as you know, workers will keep even more of what they earn when our cost of living tax cuts start from the 1st of July. The combination of wages up and income tax payable down a bit means that real gross disposable household income is now rising in annual terms, and that's important too. Another really important element, another really welcome and encouraging element is what we're seeing in these numbers when it comes to business investment. The national accounts show the welcome turnaround in business investment under our government is continuing. New business investment has now grown every quarter since the election, remembering that it fell nearly 2/3 of the time under our predecessors. Productivity now has also increased for 2 consecutive quarters. We're obviously realistic about that. You don't turn around decades of poor productivity performance in a couple of quarters, but it's encouraging to see it ticking up a little bit. We expect it to take some time to turn around that long-standing weakness in productivity growth that we inherited. The National Accounts measure of consumer prices moderated to 4.6, down from 5.6, and that's broadly consistent with the moderation that we're seeing in the Consumer Price Index as well. Addressing inflation is still our primary concern, but these numbers show that the balance of risks in our economy are shifting from inflation to growth. We also expect that a slowing economy will have implications for revenue, meaning smaller revenue upgrades than we have become accustomed to in the budgets that we've handed down so far. Those first 2 budgets were carefully calibrated to the economic conditions, and that will be the guiding principle behind the 3rd budget that Katie and I hand down in May as well. In challenging times, the Albanese government's economic plan has three parts. It's all about relief from cost of living pressures, repair of the budget and our supply chains, and reform which lays the foundations for future growth. And these numbers that have been released this morning show how important that three-part strategy is.